Okay, you're reading books wrong. So we got up here as an example, Discipline Equals Freedom. Really good book. It's more of a manual than a book, you could say. Up to you, but hold on, we'll just do this for the thumbnail here. And that. And look. Okay, thumbnail, good. So, you're reading books wrong. Let me explain why. This took me a while to realize, several years actually, but the education system, at least here in North America, Canada, teaches you how to read a book. Does that make sense? Does that sound weird? Well, it sounds good at first, right? Oh, someone's teaching me how to read. That is such a indispensable skill, to learn how to read in whichever language we're learning. It could be English, French, whatever. But what you may have been taught how to read, just like myself, is that you read from start to end, and that's it. That's kind of it. You read start to finish and you write an essay about it. And that's not the way to do it, at least not anymore. The way people consume education now has changed, and I don't think education systems understand that, or they're trying to stay in their old ways because people don't like change. People don't want to adapt. Some people just don't want to adapt and just stay in the old ways, and that's just how it is, and you can't do much about it. You can only do your best in your end to do what's best for you. But going back to why you read books wrong, is that I don't think schools really teach you to go in depth of understanding a book that you are interested in. They tell you to read, I don't know, Lord of the Flies or something. I don't remember what I read back in English class. See, that just goes to show that I didn't care about reading. I didn't like reading because of how it was taught to me. I was taught to read from start to finish, write an essay about it, about a book that I did not care about. And while, introducing these books were a basis, was like a guideline to reading a book, on how to read a book and obtain knowledge. There's a lot of people out there, including like myself at the time, who still don't like reading books. I like reading books now because I've taught myself a different way to read books to my knowledge and extent, and I want to teach that to you, how I do it and how you can implement how to read a book the way you want to read a book. So just a quick little plug, Discipline Equals Freedom, Jocko Willink, really good book. Here's a good point. Point one, you don't just read a book and put it away. I think when it comes to reading a book that you really enjoy, it's something that you can go back to. It's not something you read and you're done with. It's something you can go back to once in a while and learn even more from it, because you're not going to learn as much from the first read versus your 10th read. Now, that's a little excessive. That's if you're really into reading. But I've read some books a few times, and I've always learned something new, because what I learned 6 months ago can be so much different from how I am now in this present moment. Like maybe in this chapter, I didn't quite understand what this chapter was talking about, and 6 months later it's like, oh, I get it now. So books are a lifetime thing. It is part of your lifestyle, I'd say, and that is what they don't teach you at school, is that they discourage you to like read books the way you would want to read it, and like books that you'd want to read, well, especially in class, because how much you understand of a book based on an essay and how you've read it and such, and like how you've understood it, is based on a grade, is based on your grade. So it kind of, for most people, I would say it's not like a good way to introduce people how to read a book or how to learn from a book. And so here's a second point. Sometimes I don't read from start to finish. Sometimes I only read what I need to read or what I want to read. And you might be thinking, hey, Tommy, that's not how you read a book because you're not fully reading it. No, hear me out. So I save so much time reading only what I need to read within reason. Sometimes I will go through the whole book, but I've noticed that I learned way more just from finding or just from reading the pages that I needed to read, that I wanted to read. And then if I had to, I can expand my knowledge more on different chapters. And I'm sorry, I just keep holding up Discipline Equals Freedom, but it's a really good book. Maybe I'll do a video about books that I've read that you can read as well to, change the mindset, make it a little better. I'll just do another quick suggestion here. Let me check my bookshelf. This is gonna throw you in a little. There we go. Okay, ready? Dinosaur Therapy. It's a really good book. This is more for like fun. I know, quite contrasty from the Discipline Equals Freedom, but it's always nice to have a little book to give you a little laugh here and there. Shout out Dino and Comics, love him. But what was I on again? Right, reading a book from start to finish. Sometimes you don't need to do that. Sometimes you just need to read what you need to read. Actually, today I was, no, not today. Yeah, maybe today. I can't remember. I was at a cafe and I was reading a book, but here's the thing. I didn't read word for word. I only read what I needed to know, because in this book I already knew so much that I needed to know. And if I needed a refresh, then yeah, I'll go back to a certain chapter. But really, I went into that book looking for things that I didn't know. And while you may be able to learn more about something you already know in a certain chapter, I thought it was more valuable for myself to take out the information I needed from the book. And that made a huge difference. And here's a follow-up point for that. You should write down what you've learned from these books. That way you can guarantee that to yourself, hey, I've learned this, and it was so valuable that I wrote it down. And that's the same idea with quotes, right? Like, if you have a quote that really resonates with you, you write it down, you keep it somewhere. Same idea for books. Let's say, like Jocko Willink, like we'll pull up Jocko Willink again, like Discipline Equals Freedom. Let's pull something up here. Like here, just do a little quick read in here. Doesn't matter. That's the chapter here, or the subject at least. People ask me, how are you doing? I don't want to cause a scene or make a spectacle of myself. So I say something ordinary and pleasant to them, like, fine, thanks, or good, thank you. But the response in my head isn't ordinary, and it isn't pleasant. If I were to speak truthfully when people ask me how I was doing, I would tell them it doesn't matter how I'm doing, because that's the truth. It doesn't matter if I feel good or bad, or excited, or bored, or happy, or sad. It doesn't matter. I am going to do what I am supposed to do. And so you can take away from that if you want to, or maybe you don't want to, but let's say I did. And in a way I did, but not enough for me to write it down. It's more of like a mental written note, but something significant like you choose your regrets. The video I made about Chris Williamson talking about one of his guests talking about that quote. And so that was quite a significant quote for me, which I wrote down in my journal / adventure log. I used to call it the journal. Now it's the adventure log. Sounds more cool. Yeah, you're reading books wrong, most likely. So maybe you should give that a shot. Read books that you actually want to read. And read what you need to learn from it. Don't just go from start to end and then write a quiz about it. I mean, maybe you have to for school, sure, that's fine. But that's just for school. It's not for you to learn, essentially. It's just for you to get a good grade. But for your own learning knowledge, to expand your wisdom, read books the way you'd want to read it. So if you read it backwards, okay, cool. As long as you're retaining more information than the way the traditional education system has taught you. And I haven't gone back since to reading in that style. And now I retain more knowledge from these books that I read now. Vroom car. Get good, get better. Let's get her.